The Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, has asked the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, to reject a proposal by the Minister of the FCT, Wike, to spend 15 billion naira for the construction of a befitting residence for the Vice President, Kashim Shettima. In addition, SERAP urged him to affirm the Senate's authority and constitutional responsibility by rejecting the 2.8 billion naira allocated for publicity of the FCTA, as well as other potentially wasteful expenditures in the 2023 supplementary budget and the 2024 budget proposed by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And of course, joining me right now to shed more light on this and discuss this is Razaq Olokoba, Public Affairs Analyst and fellow Chartered Public Administrator, joining me in the studio. And also we have Kolawole Dare, the Deputy Director, SERAP. Thank you so much for your time, gentlemen.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much.
All right, I'd like to start off with you, Dare. Taking a quote from the statement your organization actually did release, that's SERAP. The plan to spend about 15 billion naira on a befitting residence for the Vice President is a fundamental breach of the Nigerian Constitution and the country's international anti-corruption and human rights obligation. Okay, so my question to you is this. What part or aspect of the Nigerian Constitution actually captures this, or were you referring to? And the aspect of human rights too, what aspect was being captured when the statement was released?
Thank you very much. The Constitution is very clear on what the role of government is, and in this instance, the role of the executive and the role of the legislature. And among the many provisions of the Constitution, Section 14 provides clearly that the welfare of the people and the security of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. So as part of the actions of governance, budgets are proposed and passed at the National Assembly. And I would wonder whether in fact or in law, our proposing to spend 15 billion naira to build, to put up a building that has been called befitting, whatever that means, for the Vice President, within the context of our present economic realities where more than 200 million Nigerians are poor, can be said to be in the interest and the welfare of the Nigerian people. And to put this in proper context, the same FCT got a budget of over 500 billion naira in the 2023 budget. Yet, again, just towards the end of the year, we have another supplementary appropriation for the FCT without questions being asked about how the previous allocations have been spent. And that clearly, on the basis of law and fact, clearly contravenes the purpose of government and the purpose of the Constitution, which gives those in government power to use it for and on behalf of the welfare of Nigerian citizens. Or perhaps, does this mean that the Vice President building is much more important than the millions of Nigerians that could not even afford to eat 3 square meals a day? Do not think that answer is in the affirmative.
All right. Some would have said that is SERAP actually questioning the timing of this particular project, given the current realities of Nigerians, or the actual intention of the project itself?
Whether it is a timing within the context of what we are going through now, or the concept of good governance, which means the management of scarce resources, these is not justifiable in any guise. And that is why when we look at the current issues Nigerians are grappling with in view of the economic crunch, and then the scarce resources we have by way of our income, and then the proposed spending of 15 billion naira for a building, it is justified in any way, whether in terms of law or in terms of fact. It is not justified. And it's very interesting to see the way government will try to justify the spending to the Nigerian people, to the masses of Nigerians that are facing the consequences of these economic crunch that we are seeing in this country. How can this be justified? It's also within the context of our growing debt profile. It is also against the background of the president telling Nigerians to tighten their belts to contribute their quota as part of our own, as part of that individual contribution development. We've seen public officers or the president, and in this case, the minister of the FCT, doing anything to lay that foundation, set an example, so to speak. This is not justifiable in any guise, not at all.
All right, let me go to you, Razaq. Now, the Federal Capital Territory, that's the FCTA, says plans are actually underway to spend about 15 billion, for construction of new residence for the nation's vice president. I'd like to know your take. Now, the minister said this proposal actually started in about 2010, and it was 7 billion naira that the contractor initially, pegged on it. But I mean, inflation and of course time lapse. This is 2023, and they are looking at 2024. It's been reviewed to 15 billion. And in his words, he said it's more like not refurbished this time around, more like constructing from the ground to give a befitting, in his words, residence for the vice president. Will you say in any way the minister of the FCT has a point to this?
Well, thank you very much. We have to first admit that governance is a shared responsibility. The non-state actors like SERAP and my own organization, we have a role to play in governance, and that's exactly what SERAP has been able to do. But we have to be very careful in creating a crisis of perspective for ourselves. Presidential system of government is a very bogus system of government, very costly. So, SERAP should be able to define what actually is wanted, how residence of a president of Nigeria should be run. I mean bogus in the sense that the retinue of office is allowed for under the Constitution. Why I'm not in support of wasteful spending, I will also encourage SERAP to also join in the call for how the structure we run in Nigeria will be moderated to accommodate prudent expenditure. For instance, the parliamentary system of government in the Britain, where the Prime Minister doubles as also in the House, Member of Parliament doubles as a minister. That's in a way to tell us that the duplication we have in Nigeria, where we have separate minister under the executive and also have members of parliament, does not exist there. So for us, the moment we admit and agree to run this kind of government, we should bear it in mind that it comes with its own expenses. President of any nation that runs the kind of political structure we run lives the kind of life our president in Nigeria lives. The house a president lives here has retinue of staffs. It's not the fault of the president. It's not the fault of the VP. That's what inherited. So if you want to push an argument, we should put an argument for a structural issue. We cannot ask the president not to have his retinue of SSS, retinue of police, and other domestic that is attached to it. For instance, if you look at the parliament, I don't know before, the Senate has been put down. A senator is entitled to about 9 or 11 staffs. House of Reps is about 7, and House of Assembly is about 4. And that's our concern. So we cannot isolate one senator that comes from our senatorial district and begin to combat him that he should reduce his staff. What we should be looking at is the entire political structure. It's too expensive. So we have to try to explain to Nigerians where we are coming from. So
are you saying that
I'm just laying the template for what is existing at the moment. What is existing at the moment is that the office of the president, there were arguments about the number of people that the president went to cope up with.
COP20.
And that always allows for it. He has to go with aides, several officials.
But the question I think Nigerians are asking is, on whose expense? I mean, is all of this happening?
It's your taxpayers' money. And that is why we must not deviate for the needful. All this minimalist agitation will not help us. What should be canvassing for is a fundamental restructuring of Nigeria. You can't be isolating a VP. The day they want to build a house for a governor, a president, or any public officer, what's the amount to such amount of money? And what we are saying is that It's a structural challenge. It's not an individual thing.
So
in terms of tackling, because Wike wanted to waste our money. It's because that's what Wike should do. It's not about Wike, it's not about minister, it's not about FCT, it's not about the VP. It's about the kind of how we design.
So are you saying, sorry, so because I'm trying to get you, are you saying that it's beyond the minister? The minister is just...
It's not about the minister. You cannot have a VP where you won't leave a house with the necessary security gadgets. You must have all the things that is ordinary security command center. You spend $1 million or 2 or 4 million, depending on how big it is. Not to talk of the president of Nigeria, where you must secure him. You must be able to provide the necessary things for him. But
like, so irrespective of the amount.
Irrespective of the amount, it's a necessity.
It's a necessity.
Don't let us plot ourselves against each other, because this kind of argument is capable of plotting Nigeria against each other, such that we will be thinking that we are doing any justice to the budget. You are not doing justice to budget. You are just creating avenue for us to misunderstand ourselves further.
Okay,
rather than saying that,
I will come back
let's
to you,
talk about looking at the bogus political structure we have in space today, which is the genesis of all of it. And that's my point.
Okay, I would like to go back to you, Dari. I mean, feel free to react to some of the things Razaq said, because I know you also mentioned the organization while, of course, in his analysis. I think the bone of contention right now is the cost of governance, because it's not just the residents of the vice presidents that SERAP is speaking on. There are other, issues, pending issues that basically, relates with the cost of governance. What exactly, he has talked about structure, which of course is the foundation. How do you react, Dari?
Thank you very much. We need to keep our eye on the ball in this instance. This conversation, taken from the context of the supplementary appropriation bill before the National Assembly for the FCT, and then for the 2023-24 budget, is not about the structure of governance. It is about the cost of governance, which is a matter of expenditure and spending. And we all know that the structure of governance is a constitutional issue, and perhaps the solution is not going to come that easily with all the political political issues around it. But don't let us digress. Let us focus on these issues. Even while we claim to be making efforts to solve the structural issues, we should focus also on governance, which is a continuum. And that is why we are saying the cost of governance is unnecessarily high. And every administration has spoken to this, but has done nothing to reduce the cost of governance. In this 2024 budget, we have pensions that we paid to the president, the vice president, the governors, and their deputy. We have security votes that will be paid to every major political appointee and public officers. We have funds that will cater for flights, for travel. And these are recurrent expenditures that we could do without in the face of poverty in the country. So it is about structure. It is about the allocation and the use of funds by those in power. And perhaps we need to remind ourselves of what democracy is, or the democracy as a style of governance. The people came together as an offshoot of the social contract theory, and gave power to the president and every elected or appointed person to use those powers for the benefit of all Nigerians, not for the benefit of those individuals, which is why the Code of Conduct for Public Officers in the 7th schedule of the Constitution, every public officer, including the president, swore an oath to use powers and the various resources in this country, not in the self-interest, but the interest of all Nigerians. And that also means that Nigerians will participate in governance by telling government when it has done well, by also telling government when it has not done well. And within the context of this conversation and the functions of the National Assembly, every money bill that comes before the National Assembly is to be debated, looked at, and reviewed by the National Assembly. Now, don't forget, the National Assembly represents Nigerians from their various constituencies, which is why they have powers as part of their core functions to review appropriations that will eventually get budgets, to reduce the deficit too much, set powers to increase, as the case may be. But those powers are not used the way they like. They are used in the interest of their constituents. Now, how can we justify so much? for individuals in the face of poverty. I do not think that will fly in the face of Nigerians.
Okay, I think Razaq wants to react to some of the things you said. Maybe he has contrary opinion.
You see, we have said it at the beginning of democracy in 1999, that there's no guarantee of prosperity for Nigeria under this security political structure. We are addressing minor issues. If each time we come out to address the lifestyle of our president, the lifestyle of our governor, it's the structure that determines it. The structure of military created the structure, and what I'm saying that without addressing it, all these maladies will continue to confront us. So instead of dissipating our energy, addressing ailments, what's the cause of the disease, should be our focus. See, the structure of governance is what brought about the cost of governance. It works pari passu. If you operate a budget that does not call for a Mr. President to have retinue of aides, there will be no need for the president to have a very mighty mansion for domestic workers and numerous aides to service him. And also be saying that the more you think you are going to survive with this political structure by creating a modification for it, thinking that by the time you address the president in isolation, tomorrow you are dead a senator in isolation, the more we are creating contradictions of ourselves. Instead of that, let's put our energy together to explain to Mr. President that don't be under the assumption that we are going anywhere with this political structure, because the political structure has a tendency of giving anybody that becomes the president the assumption that he's working. He signs budget every day, he signs billions of naira every day, and where is the money going to? That's the question the president kept asking himself.
So are you saying that there is an accountability deficit?
The residence of the president of Nigeria comes with a retinue of aides. They are not going to sleep under the tree. And that's what we are saying, that as a president of Nigeria and as a vice president of Nigeria, they will read about 21 security reports every day. There might be aides around them, that is a security advisor on aides, on education. Why will be the president that the survival of 250 million Nigerians will be his burden? Devolve power to states. You have minister for and you have minister of. You have 36 commissioners of minister of education, Senate Committee on Education, and the president must ensure that he attends to all these things. He can't do it alone. He must have aides that must address all these issues. Countries don't work like that. And instead of the people who understand some of these things clearer, who are more clear understanding clearer, we begin to address issues in isolation. And that's why I'm saying that, see, don't let us confuse ourselves. The structure that's existing today comes with a 15 billion residence of this vice president. There's nothing we can do about that.
I'm sorry, you said there's nothing that can be done about it?
Except you change the political structure. Except you change the political structure. If you don't change the political structure, the president cannot put down his aides. It's constitutional.
But I think
he's entitled to all those aides. He's entitled to the security vote he spoke about. He's entitled to under the law. So if you want, he has not broken any law. If he's spending all those money, he has not broken any law. So the law that gives him the power to do so is what must address. The political institution that gives our president the power of life and death over Nigeria is what we should address. We should stop isolating issues. That's majoring in minor.
Okay, so what Razaq, if of course we got you correctly, what you are saying is that the president has so much power at his disposal.
And power comes with responsibility.
And of course,
responsibility comes with expenses.
With expenses. I would like to hear, of course, Dare's reaction to this, particularly on the aspect of some provisions or our Nigeria's system or structure of government, the presidential system. I remember watching an interview recently, just lately, of the former First Lady of the United States, Michelle Obama, where she said, she was telling Oprah Winfrey in that interview that when they were in the White House, there is a peg as to the amount of food the president can eat. So let's say the president eats a particular type of fish and he enjoys it so much and he says, oh, I like this fish. The following day, they can bring 10 other varieties. But guess what? At the end of the month, right, is given a bill, a personal bill that, sir, outside your official expense, this is what you have generated personally, and that is removed from his pocket. So are we looking at, I would like Dare's reaction on this.
I just want to give you an information.
Are we looking more at a structural deficit to this problem than maybe a personal or individual interest?
Thank you very much. We don't need to be distracted by these arguments of structural problem. The problems are not structural, as it were. It is about the accountability of individuals with the powers that they've been given. And I did watch that interview, by the way. And what the First Lady emphasized is that whereas every other thing appears to be free in the White House, the food that the president eats and all the aids are paid for by himself. And that is very clear. And that is why within the context of this conversation in Nigeria, it is about the way individuals, and that is why we have found people who have also used the same powers within the same structure well, and they have used it accountably and in a transparent manner. It is about the way these individuals have used the powers and the privileges they've had to their own benefit and to the detriment of Nigerians. And that is very clear. So you would wonder, why would the code of conduct, for instance, insist as part of the things that the public officer must not do, that a public officer must not use power, resources, or any influence he has to his own benefits, to the detriment of Nigerians? That is also included in the oath of office that the other public officer takes, including the president. And in this instance, let's now marry facts with that law. How can you now say spending 15 billion there when we are knee deep, when we are neck deep in debt, when people are poor, to build a building for one individual in the face of criminal poverty? Knowing fully well that the purpose of that government is not to serve one person out of over 200 million Nigerians, it is to serve the majority of Nigerians. It's not justified. The law would not spell out everything in black and white, but the actions that we do as individuals, whether as citizens or as those in authority, will show our sincerity to the purpose of the law. All these issues about structures, of course, goes to no issue. And I think it's just an attempt to becloud the whole issue. I wouldn't join it to sort up.
Now, let's talk about accountability here. I mean, we know that these monies, we've seen cases where there's bogus expenses. Of course, there was a conversation as regards the Senate, at some point, getting very, very fantastic SUVs for themselves, at the expense of the public pocket. And the question, quite a number, sorry, Razaq, you would, of course, have your time on the floor. Probably you will be the first to respond to this. And the question a lot of people are asking is, look, there were people that occupied or used some of these utilities before you were elected to that office. What happened to those, to the House, the previous cars and all of that, that was being used by the previous senators before, the new ones came in. I remember someone saying that Downing Street, for instance, where you have, of course, the British government house, has been there for decades, if not decades, centuries, about 3 centuries, if I'm correct, that all of this appears to be wasteful spending. New administration, new monies are voted. It appears like there is a major accountability deficit in all of this. Nobody is holding anyone accountable as regards the cost of governance. Do you see that, Razaq?
Well, when we're talking about issues like this, why do public officers behave in a certain questionable manner? The answer is that the institutions are weak, which is the case in Nigeria. Successive legislators have come and have bought vehicles against the wish of Nigerians. Why is it that we have not been able to stop it? They are taking advantage of how the legislative institutions is structured. And for me, instead of getting excited and giving assumption to Nigerians that there are things that can be done about it year in, year out, why can't we have the courage to speak out that as long as we have this kind of legislative structure in place, by the next assembly, they are going to buy no cars again. It's not a moral issue. It's what the law gives them the power to do. And if the question of law and moralities, when it comes to institutions that are weak, that cannot be assertive, the moral issue is set aside, which is the case with the National Assembly. the moral issue that they should not buy the car.
Even at even at the detriment of public purse.
Ask them that question, not me. What I'm saying is that why are we dissipating energy? Secure your house. Do everything you are supposed to do. Don't assume that there's a police somewhere to secure your house for you. But make personal effort to secure your house. Let's build our institution to be strong enough that public office holder will not be able to take advantage of it. Well, what do I mean by that? We have said it severally that the retinue of officers that attends to our legislator is incorrect. That's number one. Number two is that the salary scale should not be fixed by the parliament. Let's build this agitation around that one. Let's stop them from having access to Nigerian money, to taxpayers' money. You didn't do that. You give them access. You give them legitimacy that this is for your welfare. That's not the case all over the world. So don't let us confuse ourselves any further. The same thing applies to the president. The house of the president comes with a lot of responsibility. And if it comes with responsibility, it can't do it alone. There must be people around him to do it. In that wise, he moves in flock. He moves with his people. If the president of Nigeria is moving from Nigeria to anywhere, it goes with a lot of people. That is the structure you have built around him. Why will it be the federal government that will take care of our security? The economy of the state, where still must have access to their own resources. It's the federal government. Health sector, education sector, everything is federal government. And you think it doesn't come with some expenses. The idea of this kind of structure, when they put it in place, was after the Civil War, that is going to unite us. Whereas it's not the case. The more you subdivide the nation into a smaller unit for governance purpose, the more effective it becomes. And we tell our colleagues, I respect the opinion of SERAP, all of them are our comrades. We say that let's put our resources together, including the labor. Let's put our resources together. Let's explain to the government in place today that this political structure is going anywhere. The deficiency that comes out of you now want to start addressing it. You are saying that 15 billion naira is too much to build the house for the vice president. And to me, I said that you are getting us excited over nothing. What we should do is to reduce responsibility.
I mean, 15 billion. I'm sorry, but 15 billion is it's something to really get excited about. 15, I mean, it's a lot of money.
What I mean by this is that, get it from where I'm flowing from. Where I'm flowing from is that the VP is surrounded by a lot of responsibility. That house is an extension of his office.
But there is a house. I mean, it's currently staying.
Oh, if that is the question, house. Fine. That is the question, fine. If you are saying that, what about the former house? That argument makes a lot of more sense to me. That, about the former house, let's look at it. Yeah, that's fine. But if there's a need for him to get another house, we cannot do away with having come with this kind of expenses. It will come with it. So rather than trying to get ourselves excited, I repeat it again, over all this matter, that is how the life of our president will always be. It will be bogus, it will be expensive, it comes with a lot of resources belonging to Nigeria, unless and until we address the structure. It's an umbilical cord links together. Okay. I can say that the expensive, this political structure.
I'm sorry, Razaq, I might just need to cut in here a bit. I mean, we need to go on a quick break, but when we return, I'd like to know exactly what SERAP will do moving forward should the Senate President not bulge. Well, let's go on a quick break. When we return, of course, the conversation continues. Welcome back. Of course, we are discussing the cost of governance in Nigeria, particularly will I call it a public letter, as SERAP actually did, of course, write to Nigeria's Senate President, asking the Senate President to actually, within his power, try to stop the FCT minister from proposing a bill or implementing the proposal of a bill for the residence of Nigeria's vice president, a tune of about 15 billion naira, saying that, of course, it's pretty much insensitive and a breach of the fundamental rights of Nigerians and also the Nigerian Constitution. Still with me, I have with me Kolawole Dare, the Deputy Director, SERAP, and also Razaq Olokoba, a public affairs analyst and also fellow chartered public administrator. Thank you so much for your time, gentlemen.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, Dari, I would like to, of course, start this conversation with you. Let's talk about accountability in terms of how monies are doled out. We know that this particular, will I call it a public statement that you've put across to Nigeria's Senate president, knowing fully well that the Senate holds the power to approve and disapprove whatever proposal is presented before it. Do you think, in terms of accountability, what areas do you suggest or do you think Nigeria needs to tighten up?
Thank you very much. We can look at this conversation from the Nigerian citizens as being right holders and those in public offices, whether they are elected or appointed as duty bearers. The problem in matters of governance, the issue has always been less of that of the citizens, but those who have those powers. Don't forget that the citizens also have power, including these kind of conversations that we're talking about. And every time we go to the polls every 4 years or during the off-cycle elections. But when it comes to the exercise of governance, it is those in public offices who have those powers to use public funds for the benefit of people, including the elements of coercion with the law enforcement agencies. So you can see in this instance where the balance of power rests. What we have always seen is that public officers are not accountable for the powers and the privileges that they've had, because the law is not clear. It is not because of the political structure. It is because they are not accountable for the powers and privileges they need. And there are no mechanisms to compel them to be accountable. For context, and also following all the conversations we've been having. For instance, Chapter 2 of the Constitution mandates that Nigeria should provide everything that every citizen is running of this country to go and look for in other countries, in Europe, Canada, and America. It clearly provides that it is the duty of government to provide affordable healthcare, free education to university level. These are the provisions of the Chapter 2 of the Constitution. But our public officers will not do that. They would rather spend these funds, in this instance, to build what they term the befitting edifice for the Vice President. I'll give you another example. The National Health Act, Section 11, clearly provides that not less than 1% of the consolidated revenue fund will be allocated to the National Health Fund. And what is this fund supposed to do? It is meant to make sure that everybody in the rural area with the primary health care will be able to get affordable. The emphasis on affordable health care, among other things. It will mean our hospitals will work. Also, the UBEC Act, Section 11, the same UBEC Act, provides for not less than 2% of the consolidated revenue fund should be considered as a fund by the state government, including the FCC in this instance. So look at what is that fund supposed to do? To make sure that every child in Nigeria goes to primary school and the first 3 years of secondary school free of charge. Now, what has happened over the years is the states, including the federal government, allocates just that bare minimum, 2% and 1% under the National Health Act. And don't forget, the law says not less than. And so you are not surprised that we have more than 20 million out of school children in Nigeria. It used to be 30 million some years ago, now it's 20 million. But these same public officers can allocate funds for pension for themselves, for every kind of extravagance, including traveling and all this. And so when we see the results, we cannot but complain that we have brought this upon ourselves. So the issue is simply about the accountability of these individuals in public offices and the failures of the structural systems that should compel them to act. Unfortunately, the consequences of this malfeasance is borne by everybody, including those who hold this public power, which is why you see Nigerian presidents go abroad for healthcare service. We think that is not normal. Is that a sound practice? And yet we continue to pay lip service to the problem, like the conversations we've been having about diagnosing the problem, we are about structure, less about accountability. That's certainly the case.
I mean, I would like to go to you, Razaq, in terms of also priority, because one thing I think Daira has been able to clearly highlight is the fact that it seems, to a very large extent, public office holders seems not to have the people's interest, to a large extent, as priority. Do you agree?
There's no public officer anywhere in the world that seem to have the love of people at heart.
Sorry, you said...
Sorry.
Okay.
I'm a chartered public administrator, and I do comparative analysis of public administration all over the world. It is your structure that compels you to do the right thing. It's not your conscience. When there's a traffic light anyway. If you break the law enforcement must come after you. If you run away, they must come after you with all their might. Next time is a precedence. So it's not a conscience. Anywhere you go to in the world, you see people obeying traffic. It's not their conscience. It's the institution. My friend spoke extensively about the constitution that says free education. And I don't know why my colleague is trying to refuse to see the link between constitution and the structure. We have similar law in the rest of the world. What they do is that the legislative.
I think the constitution should be the foundation of decision making.
The legislative that see, when you put up a constitution that is very loose like Nigerian Constitution, you are not going to get anywhere. We have spoken to ASU on this matter extensively, that you can't be telling people to run free education and you allow them to train their children abroad. Get a legislation. Everybody that has anything to do with education in Nigeria, policy, minister, advisor, consultant, must not take their children out of this country. It's a legislation. And my friend here, we have had debate on similar matters as well. Of course, that's what they do in the rest of the world. It's not as if they leave it to the conscience of public office holder. The same thing with the health sector. Any diseases, any sickness that you can treat in Nigeria, no public office holder should go to other countries of the world to treat it. That's how it happens in the rest of the world. I've come every time to raise excitement about some of these. So also, about the expense we are talking about, when you give people power to spend money, you will spend money. So don't come and tell me later about the conscience. That's what I'm saying, that we are wasting Nigerians' time. Each time we say this, we are on a capitalist economy. A capitalist economy, the recurring decimal is profit. If you want us to change the structure, then let's debate it.
All right. I mean,
our government cannot be privatizing.
I need to leave you.
They can't run
now,
a bogus political structure when the law allows it. You don't turn around to say that you don't have that right. So don't let us enter into undue polemics. Let us tell it as it is. The structure allows what is happening. If you don't want it to happen, strengthen your structure. Strengthen your institution. All right,
Razaq, I'm sorry, I might just need to leave you. I want to know Dare's thoughts. I mean, what will SERAP do should the Senate President not, bulge to your open request? We've seen SERAP in the past actually even sue the government, on certain matters. But on this particular issue, what will be SERAP's next move should this request or this open, letter to the Senate President not find fruition, but him?
Thank you very much. One of the unfortunate consequences of the malfeasance in governance is that we would have conversations like this, where we would preempt what if the government does not do what it's meant to do, what will citizens do? And that, unfortunately, is one of those sad consequences of these malfeasance in governance. Of course, we will do what the law-abiding citizens should do. We will go to court because that is the arm of government that has been given the power to ensure that citizens can ventilate their grievances, of course, within the context of the law. But unfortunately, this is sad. This is not something that should form the basis of public interest litigation. No, not at all. But we would have no choice but to go to court because, again, no other means will be lawful. Section 6 of the Constitution is very clear as to the role of the judiciary.
Sorry for cutting you. Sorry for cutting you, Dare. This is not the first time SERAP has taken government to court. Can you give an idea of how many cases so far, maybe SERAP has won or, has seen a conclusion at court level?
This question reminds me of the various levels, the expression of angst that Nigerians express whenever we talk about public litigation, public interest litigation. We've had a lot of times that have sided with Nigerian people. For instance, the state compelled the government to disclose how much had come in by way of Abacha. We filed that suit in 2019 and the court gave judgment this year, compelling the government to tell Nigerians. Again, does this have to do with structure? Compelling the government, to tell Nigerians how much has been recovered in totality from Abacha and from where those funds have come from. And the details of how these funds have been spent. And the case was predicated on the Freedom of Information Act. That judgment is yet to be obeyed.
All right, Dari. I'm sorry, but I'm told you're pressed for time. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for, of course, being on the program today. Kolawole Dari, Deputy Director, SERAP, and also Razaq Olokoba, Public Affairs Analyst and fellow Chartered Public Administrator. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time.
It's a pleasure being with you.